Happy Friday here at the Scarlet Faithful. Wanted to touch on a few things, starting with Rutgers basketball. Once again, just a fascinating offseason in college basketball already, only mid April here. And obviously, a lot still to develop for Rutgers basketball in terms of roster reconstruction, three open spots. We learned on Thursday that one intriguing prospect that I spoke about recently this week, a four from Ball State, Bashir Jihad. He committed to Arizona State yesterday, so he's obviously no longer an option. Rutgers does have Jordan Durkak visiting the Northeast Conference Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year soon. He's also scheduled to visit Penn State. He also has Seton Hall on his list. I know the guys over at the Night Report spoke about him, Richie O'Leary, and Mike Broadbent, just in terms of it appears that Penn State is a favorite there. He's a bigger guard. I think even if Rutgers doesn't necessarily land Durkak, I think it does. It's a tell in the sense of the type of profile they're looking at. I think they're only looking at bigger guards right now. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of them adding a 3-and-D type player, whether that's a big guard or a wing. You need at least one more shooter. You obviously need a big. I think they're looking at a lot of athletic bigs. There's the guy Casey and Pryor from South Florida that recently entered the transfer market. It's really intriguing if they do add a true five who is offensively skilled. That would bring a whole nother dynamic to this team for next season. I've spoken at length about the need to be able to score points. You got to be, around that 80-point mark, I think, to be able to succeed in terms of playing elite teams and winning in March. So it's going to be interesting to see. But one dynamic, as the Nike Hoop Summit takes place this weekend, and it's already been going on for a couple of days. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper getting rave reviews once again for their performances there with some elite competition. They play the world team on Saturday. So it's just, every little step along the way, I hope Rutgers fans can appreciate to have two players of this credibility and hype. And I talked about the hype train leaving the station with Rutgers and all the preseason rankings earlier this week. But with Ace and Dylan, it's just bringing a profile of the program that is kind of beyond our wildest imaginations. And it's just starting. And my bigger point is that college basketball is changing so much with NIL, with the portal, but it's also changing in terms of the power structure. Those factors, of course, but also, in terms of the coaching carousel, you have so many legends that are no longer coaching. A lot of activity this week. We have Mark Pope leaving BYU to go to Kentucky now. Obviously, Calipari earlier this week going to Arkansas from Kentucky. But in terms of, there's been some discussion I've seen about what true blue bloods in college basketball and all that. And, I don't think anything is really a given anymore. There's certainly programs that have a huge amount of resources. They have tremendous facilities. But that playing field is becoming more level. It's not a handful of programs looking down on everyone else anymore. And I think for a program like Rutgers, with the practice facility that they have, with the home court advantage, NIL support can always be better, but there is, they are competing in the NIL landscape and landing a guy like Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. The recruiting is on the uptick. There is a lot to be positive about Rutgers, and I am not, under any delusion that they are one day going to become a blue blood. But my point is, I think that there's a lot more parity and there's a lot more realistic attainability, so to speak, right? In terms of more programs having a chance to succeed at a high level. Where, year to year, things could be a lot different based on, if programs go all in one year on NIL, how programs that are able to retain players versus not. I just think the power dynamics and it ties into the coaching dynamics. It's all changing. And Rutgers has a chance here to really jump up a peg or two, and it could be a sustainable move. So it's really exciting. I think that just in terms of, Ace and Dylan and what they're bringing to the program before they've even stepped foot, permanently as first year players. Uh, for this upcoming season, they brought so much already. There's going to be a lot of activity in the next, I'd say, 3 weeks with the transfer portal. As I mentioned, Rutgers having that visitor soon, and then they're definitely working on other visits soon. Again, if you don't hear them out mentioned with certain players, there's no reason to panic. I think very much things are at a standstill in the transfer portal more than not. Just in terms of a lot of the high end NIL funded programs have not really been very aggressive so far. The big man market. I mean, there's so many quality big men that the market is at least they're requesting, right, really high numbers, high six figures. There's just not that many programs that can support that, right? So I think once you start to see the top, handful of programs start to make some moves and land some of these top big men, and Cliff Amore could be one of them, then you're going to start to see the market kind of reset and kind of settle in, so to speak. And I think that the big man market is top, right? But in terms of shooters and in terms of other roles and types of players on the open market, it's all going to start to fall in place pretty soon. I think it is pretty much, it's a feeling out process. Everyone's flying blind a little bit, and of course, players are going to ask for as much as possible. But that's up for the programs and the coaches to figure out, what's real, what's not, what's attainable, and how is it going to trickle down to everyone else, right? It's fascinating to watch. But again, I've said it and I'll continue to say it. When you evaluate who Rutgers is involved with, if you evaluate who's on the open market and why isn't Rutgers being mentioned with them, or does Rutgers have a legitimate chance with them? NIL has to be in front of mind in terms of any of those questions. So I think once things start to develop, I think in the next week, 10 days, you'll start to see some movement here. And again, I think the big man market is going to dictate a lot of that. But just in terms of, Dylan and Ace coaching moves, it's fascinating to see the landscape of college basketball change so drastically. And it really is a peak time for the traditional powers, right, to really be challenged by some non-traditional programs. And Rutgers is well positioned to be one of those. A few other things I wanted to talk about in terms of football. I don't know if everybody saw it this week. There was a analytics site. And it's a Twitter account that I follow. I'm just pulling it up right now. It's Parker Fleming with Stats of War, and he did a different conferences win totals based on analytics. And Rutgers showed up at fifth in the Big Ten at 8.09 wins. Based on computer simulations for next season. Again, no, it's fantasy, right? But it's all based on real analytics. Obviously, production for Rutgers pretty heavy coming back. I thought it's been very interesting in terms of the press conferences during spring. Shiano talked on Saturday about the defensive line and not fulfilling its potential last season, but spinning it in a positive of, obviously I hired two assistants for to handle the defensive line, but also just with how many players they have coming back, the opportunities that are there for some of the younger players to step up. If Rutgers' defensive line can get better, it's going to be a huge progression for the defense as a whole. So I thought that was very telling that he said that. And I think all the coaches' press conferences have been really interesting so far. But they're about 3 weeks in. Saturday will mark the end of the third week. Spring Day, just a spring game. The Scarlet White game is just a little over 2 weeks away. We'll have plenty of coverage leading up to that. But this team has opportunity. The fact that they're showing up in analytical models to be at that 8-win mark, it's certainly possible. I've talked about it before. There's lots of toss-up games going into this season. I think there's two surefire wins. I think the difference is that there's not really any surefire losses like previous years with Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan off the schedule, but there's a lot of 50-50 games. So health is going to be a big part of it. Rutgers returns a strong starting core on both sides. Obviously, playmakers on offense developing and emerging is going to be a huge part of that as well. So exciting times with Rutgers football, and just a little bit 2 weeks over uh, from the spring game. And then just a quick little mention of spring sports. Right now, baseball and softball, they're both hosting Nebraska this weekend. Nebraska is ranked in baseball. Rutgers baseball has struggled out of the gate here in Big Ten play, 1-5 only. They are 20-12 overall, but this is a huge series for them. If they could win 2 out of 3, really gives them some momentum here. And then softball has been a pleasant surprise. They are 7-4 in Big Ten play. They host a pretty good Nebraska team as well, but they're well over 20 wins at this point. So good job for Kristen Butler and that program. And then lacrosse, it's men's lacrosse got a big win last weekend on the road at Michigan, who were ranked at the time number 16. They beat Michigan now 9 times in a row. It was a must win to keep them in postseason contention for the NCAA tournament. They're at Maryland, who's in the top 5 this weekend. Rutgers does not perform well against Maryland really ever in Big Ten play. So this is a huge opportunity for them because a win would just do wonders for their resume. And then women's lacrosse, unfortunately, lost a heartbreaker to Stony Brook, who's ranked 15th on, I believe, Wednesday. And they're now, not a conference game, obviously, but they're also started 0-5. Cassidy Spillis leading the country in goals, but a step back there for women's lacrosse. So, you do have rowing ranked number 15th. They're kicking off this weekend. You have track and field's going to have some success. I'm going to be talking about them pretty soon as well. But, we'll see how things shake out. But obviously, spring camp for football and portal season for transfer season, portal season for men's basketball is certainly a focus here. We'll talk about women's basketball soon as well. But just wanted to thank everybody for support. And this week, I also have Scarlet Faithful merchandise now available on Night and Day apparel on their website. So check it out. If you use the code Scarlet Faithful, you get a 10% discount if you're so inclined. So that's exciting. But lots of good things coming up next week. Have a couple guests planned. I think you like. Hope you have a great weekend and stay safe out there. Thanks so much for listening once again.